r/nosleep. Hosted by you/BrittonRT. The records of Sam Parks, Plastic Daddy. A rumor from a truck driver in a bar. That's what we were going on. We had originally been headed to an old abandoned asylum from the 40s when we had stopped for the night and decided to go grab a few beers at a local dive off the highway. And now we had changed our plans and were headed to a small town, population 16, deep in the heart of cattle country in the Central Valley of California. If ever I needed proof that we just sort of drifted where the wind took us. Well, this was it. It had been an interesting story though, and his friend from Enfield had corroborated it when we called, for what that's worth. We were like a miniature army now, cruising up I-5 in my Jeep and our newly acquired van. We had the whole squad, Jake, Alan and his new girlfriend Tanya, and of course Sam and I and a shitload of new equipment and guns. See, there had apparently been a reward put forward by several of the families of the women who had gone missing as a result of that lunatic we had encountered and barely escaped outside of Tonto. Sam and I had both agreed to turn them down, but two of them insisted. As horrific as the whole thing had been, I was glad to have helped bring them some peace and closure. The cash didn't hurt either. They had given us nearly 30 grand collectively. And hence the new van and gear. And the guns. No way was I ever letting anyone go around unarmed again. I'm no gun nut, but it had become obvious to everyone that the shit we were entertaining ourselves with was a dangerous business. We had other new toys too, like 2 long-range drones and a satellite internet connection for when we went to remote locations. Spring was coming on, and being on the road again after our long hiatus was exhilarating. Most of our last few duds had been local shit in South Arizona, and we had essentially picked the asylum at random to visit. But as these things so often go, we just followed our noses. As soon as the lanky driver had told us about the plastic man in Enfield, we knew we had to check it out. We were off the highway by the time the sun started setting and made our way through the winding dirt roads of the Central Valley Hills, the golden grasslands nearly glowing in the orange light. I swear I nearly hit some sort of animal at one point, though I couldn't see what. This place was pretty remote. The small bridge which crossed the San Andreas fault line was hard to spot in the dark and I nearly missed it, but a quick stop and reverse and we were in the tiny community. A little dude ranch run by a generational family. The whole town consisted of nothing but that family and their staff. Just 16 people, a handful of buildings, and a few trailers. It had a bit of a resort feel to it though, they had clearly put some work into it. John was there to greet us, presumably having seen our text saying we were close. It was off-season apparently, but he'd been happy to rent us 3 rooms in his small lodge. Hey there, just take the right ahead and park wherever you please. I followed his directions and soon we were starting to unload. He quickly caught up with us. He was generously helpful, offering to carry some of our stuff for us. We didn't unload it all, just what we needed for the night, and then he assisted us in finding our quarters. They were quaint but nice. Me and Sam's had an odd old tool theme, with a lot of the furniture and decorations being made from antiquated turn-of-the-century hardware. It had been a long drive and we quickly thanked John and passed out. The next morning we all convened in the cabin which functioned as the minuscule town's bar and restaurant. Nobody else was around except the few permanent residents due to the time of year, but a couple of the regular staff were kind enough to cook us up some breakfast. We ended up chatting with them a bit as we all ate together. So John said you were here about the mannequin? Jake couldn't help himself. Actually, John's friend said you all had the best beef in the country, we're here for the burgers. I can recall the knowing snicker on Ian's face as the words were spoken. Yeah, it's not bad. Not the best time of year, but we'll do burgers tonight if you want. He quickly drove the ship back on course though. Seriously though, John's daughter is fucking losing her mind. It shows up outside her window almost every night. I've seen it too. Creepy as hell. You don't mind if I record this, do you? Alan was pretty diligent about asking these days. He had left audio rolling on the table this whole time, but he had been advised by my mom's lawyers to always get permission on tape if we wanted to be able to use this material later. Nah, you're good. Ian went on. Not a lot of trees out here as I'm sure you noticed. Sometimes you can see it out in the countryside. Just standing in the middle of a field somewhere. Doesn't matter if it's day or night, it always seems to be somewhere. But it only comes into town at night. John and Barb had apparently decided to join us. They burst in through the door, breaking the curious mood which had descended over their little establishment as the young bartending cattle wrangler regaled us with his version of the same story we had more or less heard from the trucker. Soon they were both adding their own thoughts to the mix. It was almost a bit overwhelming. It was clear they were all eager to talk about this. Barbara especially. Julia is going to college next year and I have to say it can't happen fast enough. I could tell she was lying though. Not about her leaving, but about being happy for it. It has really been the worst for her. Apparently this has been happening since she was like 5 or 6. John attempted to extrapolate on what his wife had said. We didn't believe her for the longest time, but it has only gotten worse. We've all seen it now. Sam had some questions of her own. Can you describe in detail what you have seen yourself? Like with your own eyes? Sometimes I see it in the old abandoned house across from my trailer. Ian's addition was unexpected. I could tell John had been just about to speak. But he let his cattle hand continue. Just standing in the window of the decrepit place, looking into mine. I pretty much keep the drapes down because of it. I don't need some plastic man watching me while I sleep. The day progressed pleasantly from there. It was warm and lovely in the Golden State, and we were given a full tour of the town, along with plenty of stories to go with it. The great oak tree in the middle of the small community must have been hundreds of years old. It was massive, and stood in stark contrast to the vast empty fields and hills which surrounded it. A relic from a bygone era. We decided to picnic in private for lunch so we could discuss our thoughts, ideas, and potential plans of action. Everyone we had talked to believed that the mannequin was real, having claimed to have seen it themselves. So if it was really so promiscuous, we ought to be able to happen upon it as well. That was the idea, at least. We agreed on 2 initial targets. The old rotting house across from Ian's trailer, and the window of Julia's bedroom. It took some convincing to get John to agree to the latter, but Julia seemed thrilled to have us there. It was obvious she had been spooked by this whole ordeal for some time. The look on her face when she found out we were investigating convinced me of its veracity more than anything we had been told so far. She was clearly terrified. And she welcomed our help. Once everything was set up, we took them up on those burgers. Free-range California beef. The trucker hadn't been lying. I got one with jalapenos and it might have been the best burger I'd ever had. Julia gave us her own accounts as we all sat about in the old lodge. I always keep my windows locked and blinds shut, but sometimes I can just feel him there. When my curiosity gets the best of me, I'll occasionally steal a peek. He's not always watching, but every now and then he'll be standing there, looking in. I still don't know why you don't just move to the bedroom upstairs. John chimed in. Dad. It's been my room my whole life. I'm not moving. Her father seemed annoyed though. Well, it doesn't make me comfortable having my daughter subjected to such bizarre intrusions. This had clearly been a long-running debate between the two. When exactly did this all start happening? Jake intervened to keep the conversation from derailing into a family squabble. Gosh. Barbara had to think for a moment. 2008 maybe? Seems like just yesterday. What about the mannequin itself? Do you have any idea where it came from? Yes, it was in the old house. Not sure why it was there, but it had always just been a dusty old relic before it started. She paused. Before it started moving around. We finished eating and retired to our rooms for the night. There was a nice common lounge between the rooms and the lodge, and we all hung out there for a while, drinking and chatting about random nothings. Sam and I retired early for some alone time, and morning came as fast as ever. That fucking rooster. It wouldn't shut up. What time is it even? Apparently still asleep, Sam just snored in response. I stumbled into my clothes and out into the lounge, forgetting or not caring about a shower. Alan was already up, fucking around with one of the drones. He gave me a devious glance when he saw me bumble into the room, and with the press of a button the large and expensive contraption lifted off the floor and hovered in the middle of the space. Dude, not inside, you're gonna break it. I was still wiping the crust from my eyes. It's fine, the thing controls like a dragonfly. It can just sit here, check it out. It was pretty impressive, I remember thinking. Just suspended in mid-air, barely moving an inch. Technology is a crazy thing. I'm gonna take it out and survey the town. About time we popped the cherry. Christ, Alan. It sounded fun though, so I joined him after shamefully stealing a morning shot of the leftover scotch. We spent the better part of an hour flying the 2 drones around together. The high-definition cameras on the things were quite impressive. But what was even cooler, and what we had paid a small fortune for, was the fact that they were stereoscopic. Our headsets let us see what they saw as though we were right there, depth perception and all. Flying around the town like birds or bugs, lords of the sky. I think I found my new hobby, Alan said it, but I could tell you in that moment I planned to be doing this a lot as well. It was truly a blast. Sam, Tanya, and Jake were up when we got back inside. Instead of playing with toys, they had apparently gone and fetched the video cameras and were already reviewing them. I'm not sure how I didn't spot them from the air. I must have been pretty distracted weaving around the fields and buildings. Look who's come back down to earth. It was a jab, but what they were looking at was pretty unearthly as well. Alan and I watched the screen of the laptop. There it was, standing at the window inside the old house, staring out at Ian's trailer. We could only see it from behind since the camera was positioned inside the house. How did it get there? Is it still there now? I had so many questions. 1 second. Alan fucked around with some Bluetooth shit and soon we had it on the lodge's big screen. Sam rewound to the point where the thing showed up. It was strange. Whenever it moved, it seemed to become blurry. Undefined, almost immaterial. And when it stopped moving it snapped back into a solid form. Eventually it left, sometime before daylight. Have you all checked the other camera yet? They had. There was no sign of it outside of Julia's window. Alan and I looked at each other knowingly. Drone time. We were gonna figure out where the hell this thing had wandered off to. A number of the locals were out and about now and our little search operation had apparently become more interesting to most of them than whatever work they were probably supposed to be doing. Even John and Barbara found us after seeing the things in flight whooshing about. We had been going at it for roughly 20 minutes, but hadn't spotted it anywhere yet. Everyone took turns at the helm. We were doing it as much for fun as practicality, but I was hoping we'd locate the old creepy plastic artifact. They had said it was always somewhere, after all. Or at least Ian had. I shouldn't have been surprised, but it was actually Ian who ended up finding it. He had, after all, seen it around more than anyone. So he claimed at least. So presumably he knew its haunts. It was up in one of the hills just across the pasture, hidden among some small trees and bushes. He explained. Yeah, it seems to hang around up in the hills during the day. I've spotted it up there watching us sometimes during drives. He paused a moment. Can this thing record? Alan answered. Yeah, here I'll hit the button for you. It's hard to find with the headset on if you don't already know where it is. Seconds later, we were capturing video. Alan had it streaming to his phone by some Bluetooth miracle. I had no idea how to do that, so I just looked over his shoulder. The thing wasn't moving at all. It was just like someone had placed it and left it there. I recall watching intently, waiting or hoping for some kind of movement or reaction to the drone hovering around it. So I was pretty startled when I suddenly heard the buzz racing toward me. The other drone smacked right into my head. It didn't really hurt, but it sure scared the hell out of me. Sam. What the actual fuck? She quickly landed it and took off the headset. I'm sorry. I was just trying to buzz you, I swear. Her sheepish look was obvious. I didn't mean to hit you. I had been pretty clear about not trying tricks or pranks until we were better at flying them, given their price tag. At least it didn't look like she had damaged anything though. I didn't notice her make her escape as I inspected it. In typical Sam fashion, she had immediately started to set off in the direction of the located mannequin. Probably as much to avoid my wrath as any other reason. Sam, where are you going? But apparently I was outvoted, as without words spoken almost everyone started following her into the field and toward the hill. I picked up the drone and headset and followed the pack. When we got there, the drone Ian had been flying was still hovering in place. He'd parked it there while we made the quick walk. The plastic mannequin was still there as well. It looked like one you might see in a clothing store. A bit old, but completely normal. A sort of low-fidelity representation of the male form. Velp, I should have done this years ago. John approached it and grabbed the object of our attention. John, no. It took me a second to realize it was Barbara speaking. Leave it be. And why the hell should I do that, Barb? I've been chasing this goddamn thing around for years. And every time I get my hands on it, you somehow convince me to just put it back in that rot of a house. Some of the other staff members, Ian included, seemed a bit uncomfortable. A few of them headed back toward town while the rest of us lingered. John had the thing by its waist and started heading back as well, dragging it as he went. John. I swear to God, I will tear you a new one tonight. She seemed oddly livid. Soon we were all trickling back into Enfield. John didn't waste any time throwing the thing into the large dumpster which served as the town's only way of getting garbage out. The thing had a lock on it, and he made sure to lock it again as soon as the plastic object was stuffed inside. We did the obvious thing. Camera right in front of the dumpster. We hadn't come all this way for nothing. John didn't seem to mind, in fact he seemed glad we were keeping an eye on it. Nothing of note happened for the rest of the day, and soon enough we were all passing out yet again. We'd check the cameras in the morning and see if anything had happened. Trash pickup wasn't for weeks, so the thing would be trapped in there for a while. Sam woke me. It's in the window. What? I was still reeling from a dream. What? The mannequin. It's watching us. I found it eventually through blurred vision and fumbled to get my glasses on. It was actually pretty disturbing once I could see it. Just standing right outside the window, looking right at us. As if such a thing could even look at anything. How the hell did it get out of the dumpster? I asked rhetorically. I knew Sam wouldn't know any more than I did. I didn't like the eerie moonlight being the only source of light, so I went and hit the switch, bringing radiant clarity to the room. But when I looked back at the window, it was gone. Sam had been watching it though. Just like in the video, it turned into a blur and floated away as soon as you went for the light switch. Drone time, again. We both went outside and Sam and I both took control, trying to see if we could catch up with the thing. Our pursuit was fruitless at first, as we had no idea where to even start looking. I decided to fly over to the dumpster. It was open, unsurprisingly, but the camera seemed unperturbed. I'm going to go fetch the camera, I'll be right back. I landed the drone and went to go get the footage. When I returned, Sam was still piloting. It was sort of funny to watch. She would actually lean and move around as she flew, as if it had some kind of effect on the control of the thing, which of course it did not. I'm trying to get to another window. Barbara is in there. In where? I asked in response. The old house. I was watching through a window but it wasn't a good angle. Trying to find another. In the house? I recall thinking maybe we shouldn't be spying on our hosts. Maybe she went in there to get some privacy from her family. Sam went on though. She's talking to the mannequin. I can't hear anything through this, but she was definitely talking to it. Unable to get a better perspective on it though, she gave up and brought the drone back. Instead, we snuck over to watch the house with our own eyes from a distance. I could see the thing standing in the window, looking out at Ian's trailer, so we didn't get closer. We waited there for nearly an hour. You sure she's in there? I was starting to become skeptical. But a few minutes later she appeared in the empty door frame, slinking off back toward the newer house the family called home. The mannequin remained in the window. We went back inside and took a look at the video from the camera we had put facing the trash. It was clear though that before anything useful could be seen, someone had powered it off. I hadn't even thought about the fact that it was not running when I picked it up, but it made sense now. It must have been Barb, right? Sam speculated. She turned it off and unlocked the dumpster. Perhaps? I didn't know at the time. It was an idea, she was clearly up to something. I'm going to go get the tape from inside the house. Sam seemed decisive. It was still there in the window. You sure that's a good idea? She didn't give two shits whether it was a good idea or not though, and was already out the door. I tried to keep up after grabbing my gun. Perhaps it was unnecessary though, as the thing was gone when we arrived. I remember feeling a bit uneasy as I wondered where it might be lurking. The camera and its tripod were quickly retrieved, and it was no big reveal at all when we discovered it had also been turned off at the crucial moment. We were being roadblocked. What the hell was Barbara trying to hide from us, I wondered. When the morning came, we retrieved and reviewed the video from the camera outside Julia's window as well with the rest of the team. This one had not been shut off, and revealed the plastic man standing outside her window for several hours, but no sign of Barb. It appeared oblivious to the presence of the recording device. Tanya was starting to become pretty discomforted by everything she was seeing. I had noticed it in her the other day, the first time we had caught some video, but this just seemed to seal it. I want to go home. She was pretty much tugging at Alan as she said it. This shit is scaring me. Alan was pretty displeased himself to hear her starting to chicken out on him. There's only the two vehicles, we gotta stay babe. Sam was on the case though, taking to her side and somehow managing to reassure her in fewer words than I'd have spent describing how to boil potatoes. Pretty soon her nerves seemed to be settling again. I will be honest though, when that thing was watching us through the window, I was pretty unsettled as well. It is hard to think of anything worse than someone watching you through a pane of glass while you sleep. Poor Julia. Those blinds on her window must have been her lifeline for years. A sudden knock on the lodge door caused me to jump, but Sammy had it answered before I even thought to get up. It was Ian, and he was invited in to join the crew. He had apparently seen us sneaking around his trailer last night. Yeah, I hadn't wanted to mention it around the others, but I've definitely seen Barb go into that house at night many times. What do you think she's doing? Jake asked in return. No idea really. Never had the nerve to check it out, she pays my bills after all. Well, her and John. He had to know something though, surely? He didn't need to be pressed though, he had clearly come to spill his guts. To be honest, I don't think John knows. But she's somehow connected to all this. I'm certain of it. He looked at us with a face which belied his uncertainty about whether to proceed or keep his trap shut. He proceeded. Barbara was really mad when she found out you all were coming. She doesn't want you all here, poking around. Alan spoke. Surely shit like this is bad for business, right? I mean, what do your guests think about all of this stuff happening? Well, usually it isn't much of an issue. We've had a few people notice it, but it rarely fucks with the visitors. It was watching us through our window last night. Sam decided to enter the fray. Ian seemed a bit surprised. Really? Never heard of it doing that for anyone except Julia. We went on for a while, but Ian had duties to attend to and had to break away. The hunt for the plastic man resumed for most of the remainder of the day. To no success, he was nowhere to be found. I could tell that Sam had something on her mind as we thoroughly searched the old house together that afternoon. We hadn't found anything of interest, and the place wasn't that big, so I didn't really expect anything to be discovered. Her mind was in a different place. I want to go talk to Barb, she's the only one here who might know what is going on. Sam wasn't wrong, but I couldn't help but think that the woman might not be too eager to talk about it. Given the sneaking about at night, and all. I spoke my thoughts. True, but we won't know until we try. We won't ever know if she asks us to kindly fuck right off out of town. I responded. Sam had another idea though, as usual. She was talking to it, I know she was. So we need to hide a camera this time, so she doesn't know she's being watched. It was a good plan, and luckily we had a handful of GoPros which we could use in conjunction with an audio recorder to accomplish exactly that. Alan stealthily set it all up, and then I went in to check it out. Sure enough, you'd never know they were there if you didn't know where to look. We left the main camera in place for effect, but I fully expected it would wind up being shut off if Barbara did show up that evening. No sleep was to be had, we all stayed up and waited eagerly to see what might transpire. Ian had agreed to help us, keeping an eye on the house across from his mobile home. His text message eventually came, indicating that she had been spotted entering the building. Once more, the drones came out. They were surprisingly quiet for their size, and if you turned the lights off, they were able to move about without attracting too much attention. We went for the window of the old dilapidated residence which Barb had disappeared into. They were both there. The plastic man stood motionless at the other window while Barbara seemed to be talking at it. Of course, we had no audio, but it seemed to go on for quite a while. What the hell was she doing? Sam. I tried to wrestle her gently from her trance. I had spotted something. Ian is heading to the house. I think he's going in to confront her. I flew around and trailed him as he crossed the small dirt road. He looked right into my camera and gave me the middle finger, clearly indicating for me to fuck off. I respected his wishes and flew back a distance. Rejoining Sam at the window, we both hovered and watched as he entered the main room and started shouting something at Barb, who started yelling back. I couldn't hear a word, but Jake had apparently snuck a bit closer to try and listen in. He stormed out a few minutes later though, clearly furious about something. This was apparently the final straw for Sam, and she landed her drone, took off her headset, and marched right into the house like it was no big deal. I tried to do the same thing, I didn't want her going in there all by herself. Before I even got through the door though I heard the yelling. Why don't you just leave us the fuck alone? Barbara sounded like she was crying as she said it. We don't want you here. Finally able to see what was happening, Sam was clearly trying to decide whether to approach the sobbing woman or just back off. The mannequin was standing at the window, unmoving. Sam, let's go. I grabbed her by the wrist a bit more forcefully than I intended and pretty much dragged her back to the lodge. I could still hear Barb's sobs as we made our way across the road. Ian was waiting for us. Come inside. It was more a demand than a request, and we stepped up into his trailer. It was small but comfortable enough, a little kitchenette and some sofas. The TV seemed bigger than the bed. Beer? He offered. We both accepted. Once settled in, he got right to it. I think you all need to leave tomorrow. He hesitated a moment before continuing. As much as I'd like you all to stay and get to the bottom of this, I believe it is more trouble than it is worth. Sam wasn't so easily convinced though. We've literally got video of a self-propelled mannequin. Your boss's wife talks to it at night. We can't just leave. Yeah, that's just the thing though. I only just realized it tonight, but I know who she is talking to. The look he wore was uncertain, maybe even regretful. We can give you some space and catch up about this tomorrow, if you still want to. Once more, I tried to be the voice of reason and compromise. He hadn't invited us in for nothing though, and apparently had more to say. Trevor Grant. He's the mannequin. I heard him speak for just a moment before I went in. Unmistakable, he was one of my best friends. I'd never mistake the sound of his voice. He was quiet for a moment. I just don't understand why he wouldn't talk with me. We'd been like brothers up until the accident. No wonder Ian had been so angry looking when he had barged out of the place. There was still so much to unravel here. So are you saying some old friend of yours possessed that doll? If I hadn't seen the things I had seen, it would have sounded like an improbable question to me, but as far as I knew anything was possible. I don't know. He replied. I just know it sounded like him. I could tell he was starting to get emotional, so I offered to leave once more. This time, he accepted the offer and we made our way back to the others. A brief discourse occurred as we told the rest of the team what had happened and tried to decide on our next steps. Shifts were taken, with some of us sleeping while the others kept a close eye on the window framing the plastic conundrum. By the time I woke up, it had been long gone. Slipped off in the night while Tanya and Sam had been watching, apparently. Up into the hills. With the dawn came the retrieval of the hidden video and audio in the house. This was the long-awaited moment. We'd finally get to hear what had been said. I will admit that I kind of felt bad. I couldn't get her words out of my head. Why don't you just leave us the fuck alone? We were intruding on something deeply private. I knew it before we even started watching the video. It took some time to get everything synced, but the footage and audio confirmed it. The conversation was terse and erratic. It wasn't as much a back and forth exchange as it was just Barbara nearly pleading with the mannequin to say something to her. Sometimes it did, though it wasn't obvious where the voice was coming from exactly. But it only spoke in short and broken fragments of sentences. Barb seemed to be trying to tell it that it was in danger. She told it to go hide for a while. It wasn't clear whether it understood or was really even listening to her. It wasn't long after that when Ian busted into the scene. Their exchange was short as well, but he was yelling about Trevor and how he was sure he had heard him. This time it was Barbara who was unwilling to speak, and she mostly just took his frantic exclamations in silence. He left shortly after in frustration. After that came Sam. And then myself. These final interruptions had apparently been too much, and the moment I had dragged Sam away, Barb had made her own retreat, leaving the mannequin alone at the window. It remained there for hours, before eventually slipping away, just as Sam and Tanya had observed. Nobody was really sure what to make of it all. There's only one person who knows. I knew exactly what Sam was about to say. We have to talk with Barbara. She doesn't want to talk to us, Sam. She made that quite clear. I knew she didn't like being told off when curiosity was getting the better of her, but it was clear she knew I was right. I wasn't sure that would stop her though. Julia, then? She threw out the idea just before Tanya spoke up. Maybe we should just leave them in peace. This isn't even scary anymore, it just makes me feel sad. Like we're invading someone's privacy. I couldn't deny it. I had been thinking the same thing ever since I had heard Barbara yelling at Sam in the old house. We weren't welcome. We were a nuisance. But still, I remember how happy Julia had seemed when we showed up and she discovered why we had come. And John seemed eager to get to the bottom of this whole thing as well. Everything was so conflicted. It was at that moment that the man himself busted through the door, practically panting. Sorry to come in without knocking, but have you all seen Julia or Barb today? Looks shot back and forth and John was invited in. Apparently both of them had been gone without any note or word when he woke up, and he was an early riser. He hadn't thought much of it at first until he realized one of the trucks was gone. His calls had not been answered or returned. He had come to us as soon as he had realized something was wrong. So of course, we showed him the videos. All of them. I can only imagine what he must have been feeling as he watched the discourse between his wife and the strange plastic man. I miss you, Trevor. Quiet for some time, and then I miss. Some unusual clicking. 2. It was the voice of some guy, but like it was coming out of a drain pipe or something. Presumably, Trevor's voice. Where did you all get this? John asked. I couldn't quite read him as he spoke, but he was sure as hell focused on that video. Is there more? The only bits left though were when Ian, Sam, and I had intruded on their midnight dialogue. John tried dialing Barb again, but got no reply. He tried Julia next, and much to his relief she picked up. He left the lodge to talk alone outside and we gave him some privacy. Nobody was really certain what was happening exactly. About half an hour later he came back in. He looked like he had been crying. I have to go, I don't know when I'll be back. But Ian and the others can take care of you all. He was trying to look composed and hide his emotions, but they were plain. I'll be back as soon as I can. And then he left, without any further explanation. Perplexed and left without any real leads, we all just settled into the couches of the cabin and went about unpacking some of the wine we'd brought. Glasses were poured and we started to brainstorm, both about what all that had been, as well as what we should do next. A few hours passed. I tried to call John at one point, but didn't get an answer. Everything was eerily quiet. Until the police arrived. Several squad cars pulled into town. We didn't even notice until we heard the commotion outside. When we exited the lodge, we found Ian and several officers engaged in some heated discussion. As soon as we presented, two of the policemen approached us and immediately began asking a string of questions. "Hold up, what's going on?" I was feeling a bit bewildered. It took a while, but we were slowly brought up to speed on what had occurred. Apparently, Barbara and John were both dead. Julia had called 911 and they had found her at the scene by the side of the rural road. The two had bullet wounds to the head. They suspected a homicide followed by a suicide. Julia was the only living witness apparently. I didn't know what to say. I remember feeling so bad for her. Were we the cause somehow? There were obviously long and deep roots in all this, but were we the ones who rocked the boat so much it finally sank? Besides, what was this all about? We ended up telling the cops as much as we knew. We even showed them the stuff about the mannequin, but they seemed pretty dismissive. Not really surprising, I wouldn't have believed it either. The general assumption in the end seemed to be that the woman had lost her mind and tried to kill herself and her daughter. And that John had come and put her down, killing himself afterward. At least, that was what the local news reported. Case closed, I guess? A few weeks later though, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. "Dan speaking?" There was silence on the line for a while, but I could hear the breathing on the other end. Finally, words came. "Hi. It's Julia." She paused again. "From the ranch." I didn't need her to explain who she was. The moment I had heard the name and her voice it was obvious. She seemed hesitant to speak. "I don't know whether to thank you or hate you." I didn't know whether to respond. I just wanted to tell you though. If it hadn't been for you, I guess I'd be dead." I couldn't stay quiet any longer. "Julia, what exactly happened?" I realized as soon as I spoke it that I was being a bit too forward. "I'm sorry, you don't have to talk about it if you don't want to." "No, it's okay. I guess that is why I called. I need to get it off my chest." She went on. "Mom tried to kill me. She was going to, she had a gun. She said we were going to be with Dad forever." I could hear that she was weeping on the other end as she spoke, even though she was clearly trying to hide it. "Dad saved me. He stood in the way and took the bullet that was meant for me." Now she wasn't even trying to hide her crying. John must have been a brave man to take a bullet for his daughter. I felt respect for him. I'm not sure I'd have had the courage. But he couldn't stop her. When John showed up, he killed her, right before she was about to shoot me. I was confused. She was crying hard, and I felt bad asking intruding questions. "I thought you said your dad was shot?" "I didn't know," she sobbed. "I swear I didn't know." The realization struck me like lightning. We spent several weeks sorting through all the material we'd collected, but Julia had made it quite clear at the end of our call that she wanted to keep this whole thing private. Even Sam respected that, and as such all the names and locations in this entry have been altered for her sake. None of it went onto Facebook, and beyond this account, none will ever see the light of day. But I'll always remember the girl. She lost her whole family that day. I still can't help but feel somewhat responsible. Maybe if we hadn't been there, Barbara wouldn't have been driven to her desperate act. Maybe things would have worked out. Regardless, Julia now knew the truth. John had never been her real father. The records of Sam Parks, the family business. Holy shit, I knew your mom was loaded but I hadn't been home in a while, and mostly didn't think about it much. But seeing Sam's reaction to the estate reminded me of just how abnormal my childhood had been. I guess some would call me lucky, and in a sense I was. I didn't feel lucky though. My mom was pretty much good for one thing and one thing only, sending me money. Aside from that I barely spoke to the bitch. We pulled the Jeep into the expansive driveway and the automated gate closed behind us. Some dude, one of Mom's goons, was waiting for us near the entrance to the house. No, house doesn't do it credit. It was a fucking mansion by any definition. Escorted in, I reluctantly handed off the keys to some lackey and we arrived in the dining room. It was just like I remembered it. And unfortunately, Brandon was there. I knew he'd be present, that was part of the reason I hadn't wanted to come. The brat was insufferable. But Mom hadn't made it a choice. She said she'd break my goddamned legs if I didn't come. Her words, not mine. And I believed her. "Hey bro." The kid was glued to a Nintendo Switch or something and didn't even bother to reply. Just as well, really. No sight of Mom though, just an overly large empty room. I wondered what sort of wheeling and dealing had gone down in this place since I had moved out. I didn't really want to know or particularly care, but as Sam and I sat there waiting for her to show up, it was hard not to pass the time by speculating in my head. Are you going to introduce me to your brother? Sam's question was annoying. No. I didn't know you even had a brother. I don't know exactly what look I gave her, but I remember what I said. I don't have a brother. She seemed a bit taken aback. It's complicated. I'll explain later. It was very complicated, but it didn't occur to me how harsh my words must have sounded at the time. I'm not sure if I should have been thankful or not, but my mother interrupted the awkward mood by finally deciding to show up. She looked like her normal Botox-infused self. I'm quite certain I was practically grunting as she came in. And of course she was happy to see me, and greeted us with all her usual charm. If only. What the hell is she doing here? She was scowling at Sam as she said it. Mom was such a nice person. I didn't even answer, I really didn't care. She sat her liposuctioned ass down and got to the reason we'd been dragged into this hellhole as quickly as she could. Butlers and waiters, or whatever she chose to call them, scurried about like ants serving us something they presumably called food. I'd rather have gone to McDonald's, but whatever. They hadn't been expecting Sam, so they had to prepare another serving, but I gave her mine. I didn't mind waiting, I wasn't that hungry anyways. You all are going to Germany. I remember watching Sam poke at the steak as I tried to comprehend my mom's words. Germany? Your flight leaves in 3 hours. Your new apartment is already bought and furnished, all you have to do is take a cab from the airport in Hamburg. I didn't know what this was all about, but I sure as hell wasn't going to Germany. What the fuck, Mom? I don't speak German, and neither does Sam. I had barely even processed her statement. Why the hell do you think I'm just going to hop on a flight to another country? You barely ever talk to me, and now you expect me to just blindly leave my home? I didn't even realize I was shouting until I saw the look on Sam's face. Mr. Baker will escort you both to the airport. You will not miss your flight, no matter your opinions on the topic. Mom, I'm not going to goddamn Germany. Brandon seemed completely disengaged from the conversation. Especially not with him. I added. The old witch snapped her fingers though, and some of her men who had been waiting in the wings placed an envelope in front of my so-called brother and I. He ignored his, but I poked through it quickly while Sam watched. A plane ticket, a passport, an EU1 no less, and a bunch of other arcane documents. I couldn't help but notice that the name on all of them wasn't mine. Apparently, I was now Kevin Harding, born in America but a citizen of Germany as well due to my father being a citizen and my birth occurring there. What the hell is this? I should never have come to this sordid event. You all aren't safe here. You'll be safer in Europe, you can come back when things settle down. Sam hadn't said a word during this entire exchange. She had stopped eating, and was just listening. Sometimes I forgot just how weird my fucking family really is, but seeing her reaction to everything that was happening reminded me. Don't worry Sam, we're not going to Hamburg. I tried to reassure her, I could see the confusion in her eyes. My mom managed to turn even that little attempt on its head though. You're right, she's definitely not going. You know how long it takes to get these documents made? And in the system, no less? Used to be you could just get by with the papers, but now everything has to match the computer records. Sam, let's go. It wasn't the first time I had initiated a forced retreat with my girlfriend, but of all the things I'd run away from, my mom might have been the most infuriating. Mr. Baker blocked our path though, his huge frame filling the door from the room. Get the fuck out of the way. He didn't budge. I recall giving my mom the angriest look I'd probably ever thrown her direction. You aren't fucking serious? Tell me you aren't serious. She just picked at her nails as she responded. You're a liability here at the moment. It won't be forever, you'll be back again soon enough. She tried to put on the fakest smile I've ever encountered. Go have some fun. It's Europe, see the world or something. I'm not going anywhere without Sam. Do you not understand that? Are you retarded? She didn't seem happy about my outburst. Listen, you're getting on that fucking plane or I swear to God I'll have Mr. Baker beat the ever-living shit out of your little fuck puppy. I looked at the huge man. Knowing Mom, she probably wasn't lying either. My supposed brother still just sat there, playing some game, completely unengaged with everything occurring. I hate you. Why don't you just fucking die? I couldn't hold my words back. But she'd heard them before, and took them in stride. You can hate me on the plane. It's first class so you can drink your tears away like the little shit you are. She looked at Mr. Baker. Time to go. He apparently knew exactly what to do, And soon Brandon and I were being escorted to one of my mother's uncountable number of cars. I didn't even get a chance to kiss Sam goodbye. I texted her furiously as we were driven to the airport. She said she was going to go back to the apartment for now. She had the Jeep at least. I messaged her back that we'd find a way to reconnect. I'd buy her a ticket to Germany or something. It took a long time for her to reply. I can't leave my family. The words stung unlike anything I had ever experienced. I wasn't sure what to type next. Sam, please, I don't want to be alone in a foreign country. Another uncomfortable period of time lapsed before the ping of her reply came. Your mom said you'd be coming back. I'll wait for you. I didn't want to wait. But apparently that meant almost nothing. It was hard to blame Sam. Her grandmother was on her deathbed and wasn't expected to last another month. She had a tenuous relationship with her parents and siblings, something I could relate to. Sam had been trying to make amends and recuperate what little was left of her connections with her kin as she could over the last few years. I'd always tried to be supportive, and I suppose in a sense that had backfired on me. But I couldn't just change my tune now. I understand. I hated every letter, even if it was just a text message. I'll return as soon as I am able. I pretty much intended to immediately book a return flight from the airport the moment I got there. No fucking way was I going through with this insanity. My mom didn't even have enough respect to tell me why she was shipping me off to the far ends of the earth. I just sat there quietly as we made the remainder of the drive to the airport. Whoever this thug of mom's was didn't say a word as he drove Brandon and I there. I half expected he'd probably be on the flight with us too, just to make sure we made it to our destination. Fucking mom, that goddamn bitch. Sure enough, he accompanied us at every step of the check-in and boarding process. Like some shaved-headed bouncer right out of a cartoon or something. Didn't look like someone I wanted to mess with, but I also wasn't sure how much I cared anymore. He surely couldn't fuck me up in the middle of an airport terminal. I'm taking a cab home, I said the words with as much confidence as I could muster. He just smiled at me in reply. The moment I tried to walk away, his firm grip was on my shoulder. Your mother just wants what is best for you and your brother. You don't realize how fortunate you are. He gave me a penetrating stare. Just go to Germany. It's a nice country. You'll like it there. Lots of pretty girls, if that's what you're into. Not really my thing, but I'm not one to judge. I wanted to ask just who the hell this guy was exactly, but I knew it would be pointless. Mom had always kept strange company. We ate some crappy food in the airport terminal as we waited for boarding. Brandon didn't say a damn thing, so I wasted some time chatting with our escort. Can you at least tell me why we're being sent away? I feel like you owe us that at least. Helen doesn't want me talking business with you. But I assure you, she isn't doing it just to make you angry. These are difficult times. An enigmatic response. She had called us a liability. How the fuck could we be a liability? She was the CEO of a pharmaceutical company for God's sake, or whatever she called her enterprise. It had literally nothing to do with Brandon and I. I decided to text Sam again to pass the time. I tried to get away but this meathead has me by the balls. I guess I'm going to Hamburg. I'll come back as soon as I possibly can. Emphasis on soon, mostly for my own sake. I waited a few minutes before sending a follow-up. I was a bit surprised I hadn't gotten a response yet. I love you, Sam, I'm sorry about all this. Still no reply. I knew it was probably nothing, but I just wanted to see a few words. Just something simple typed by her. Even if it was just I love you too. So I was eager the moment I felt the vibration in my pocket. I went to check the SMS, expecting something pretty normal. A small acknowledgement at the very least. What I saw was far different. Help. They are breaking in the door. I called the cops but I don't know what to do. I typed back so fast I know I made a few spelling errors along the way. I didn't give two shits. What's going on? Where are you? At your apartment. She replied seconds later. Then almost immediately afterward, she called. I picked up of course. My heart was in my throat, not knowing what was happening. She was in tears, I could hear her crying. But she didn't say anything. I was afraid to speak, in case she was trying to hide from something or someone. My fears were proven when I heard the sound of a man shouting my name in the background through the phone. Hang up, I whispered to Sam. I'm coming. Just do whatever they ask, it'll be okay. The phone was off and I was on my feet, heading toward the terminal exit. Predictably I felt the heavy hand of my apparent warden on my shoulder again. I overheard your call. I didn't have time for this. I tried to keep moving but he had me by the arm. Get on that plane, and I'll go and take care of it. Personally. But you have to get on that plane, understand? There was no chance I was going to do what he was asking of me. And it was clear he realized as much. But he didn't back down. If anything happens to you, I'm fucked. I have a son, you know. 6 years old. I didn't understand or care why he was saying this at the time, but he went on. I know what you are feeling, wanting to protect someone you love. I tried to jerk away, but he wasn't going to have it. The boarding had apparently begun, according to the loudspeaker. If you really love her, let me handle it. You'll just get you and her killed. My every instinct told me to just run. To make my way to Sam as fast as I possibly could. But even if I did manage to break away, what was my plan? To just take a cab to my apartment? The police would already be there by then, and if they weren't, well, I certainly wasn't some John Wick. He was right. If these home invaders were dangerous, I'd probably be putting both Sam and myself in danger. It was hard, but I decided to acquiesce. Please, 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 please. Promise me you'll help her. He just sort of smirked, but I could see a bit of relief in it. Watching out for you is my job. I've been keeping tabs on you since you were just a babe. The fact that my mom had people spying on me wasn't that shocking, but it did make me hate her all the more. I already texted Sam the combination for the gun safe you all put in the bedroom. Not having her memorize it was really a stupid mistake on both of your parts. I hadn't memorized it either, and the realization that even I wouldn't have been able to access my own guns in an emergency did make me feel really stupid. Apparently this guy knew more about my apartment than I did. Now the sooner you get on that plane, the sooner I can get back to your apartment. So what'll it be? I was so angry and scared. But there weren't any options, so it was an easy decision. Go. Just fucking go. Quickly. I nearly shoved him away, but he seemed satisfied. This was going to be the longest flight of my life. Except it wasn't. I had no intention of getting on that plane whatsoever. The moment Mr. Baker was gone, I began my own tactical exit. Brandon's irritating voice suddenly attacked me from behind. Where are you going? We have to board. I turned around and I remember feeling red in the face. I'm not sure if it was visible. But I was probably harsher than I should have been. Get on the damned plane if you want, I'm not going. I just left him there alone in the airport terminal. Not something I'm proud of. I betrayed 2 people that day. No, 4 really. My little brother, abandoning him in that crowded place without any guidance. Mr. Baker, who had promised to do what he could to help the woman I loved. My mom, though I couldn't give 2 shits about her. And Sam. For letting this happen. I didn't know what this was then, but I felt like it was somehow my fault. The cab ride was expensive, but I didn't care. I continuously texted Sam as we drove, praying to hear something from her. I considered calling, but wasn't sure if she was in hiding. I had no idea what was going on. About halfway through my trip, my phone buzzed, and I frantically tried to pull out and swipe my phone. The South Asian driver was blaring some music and it was driving me mad. I read the message. We have her. We'll trade her for you. And a second later came an address. I had the driver immediately change destinations. It was a terrible feeling, not knowing what I was walking into. I tried to call Sam's number but they didn't pick up. So I called the only other person whose number I had who might know something about what was going on. My mom. You're supposed to be on a fucking plane, your flight left 20 minutes ago. She was screaming at me through the phone, obviously having deduced I couldn't call her if I were at 30,000 feet. Mom, someone broke into my apartment. They said they have Sam. Dan, you're going to go back to that airport and take the next flight to Hamburg. That is not a request. It's what's going to happen. Fuck you, Mom. Why are people breaking into my place? Where is Sam? Forget about her, there's plenty of women out there, you can do better. She seemed so snide as she said it. She didn't care about Sam at all, and as far as I was concerned, me by extension. I wanted to just throw my phone out the window of the moving taxi, but it was my only way to even have a chance of communicating with Sam at that time. I just squeezed tightly, a poor expression of my rage. The driver was giving me weird looks. I finally spoke. They gave me an address, I'm going there. They said they would trade her for me. Helen started to shriek something at me but I hung up on her and then immediately texted her the address. Maybe she'd send some of her employees. Seemed like my best shot. The driver eventually said something as well. Are you okay? Do you need me to take you to the hospital or something? No. Just take me where I asked, I yelled. You just pulled up a random address, I watched you do. I looked at him angrily in response. You know what, never mind, you're the boss. He succumbed. I felt extremely uneasy as we pulled up outside the old warehouse just on the edge of Tucson. Quickly shoving several $100s at the cab driver, I got out and immediately tried to call Sam's number again. No answer. I texted instead. I'm outside. It took a little while and I started to worry I had maybe come to the wrong place or something. The taxi was already gone, and I was just standing in front of this seemingly abandoned building. But a message did find me in time. Come in. Alone. I texted back. Sam is there? Me for her, that's the deal still, right? I waited several more minutes but whoever had her phone didn't reply. I considered waiting until my mom's men showed up, but thought better of it. Who knew what they might do to Sam if they found out I had called in the cavalry? I sucked in all of my fears, and went through that door. Nobody greeted me on the other side though. I walked through an empty and dusty storage area, large metal doors lining the front wall. Trucks must have unloaded shit here once upon a time. Not anymore. Hello? I shouted it, unsure what I was expected to do next. There were a few other doors along the left wall, and I remember considering trying one of them. As I approached the closest of them, my phone pinged and buzzed to indicate another message. It was Sam's number again. Hanging from the third doorknob. Put on the cuffs, arms behind your back. We'll collect you. I hadn't noticed it, which had surprised me, but there were indeed handcuffs hanging from the door handle. I couldn't believe I was actually going through with this. I guess I was braver than I had thought. The cuffs clicked into the locked state. I figured I was at their mercy at that point. I still had no idea what any of this was about. And that was when I heard the sound of a small armada pulling up outside. I couldn't tell exactly, but there might have been half a dozen engines or more coming to a halt just beyond those large steel loading bays. My phone started to buzz again but I couldn't answer it now, my hands fully secured behind me. A bunch of men burst in, guns drawn. The moment they saw me, I was collected and led into one of the 7 or so SUVs which had aggregated outside. Nobody paid any attention to the cuff I had on. They were making my wrists ache. Where's Sam? You promised you'd let her go. I didn't see anything of her. It was an exchange, me for her. I don't know or care what the hell you are talking about. You had your mom in a fit. Fucking spoiled brat. He shoved me into a back seat. I realized then that these weren't the people who had been texting me from Sam's phone. No, wait. You have to uncuff me. She's in the building, I need to at least message them and explain. The more I thought about what was unfolding, the more horrified I became. I don't know what they'll do to her. Please. I wasn't even given the time of day. I heard my phone buzz again. Stop crying like a goddamn baby. The man in the passenger seat yelled it at me as we cruised down the highway at what felt like 100 miles per hour. I hadn't even realized I was crying until he said it. Please, can you just check my phone? I glanced at my pocket. The suited man in the back seat with me grabbed the device and tried to turn it on. Can't even answer your own damn phone? Mommy do everything for you? I gave him the pin and he was in. No messages, he said. Give it to me. Get me out of these cuffs. He was definitely annoyed. What the fuck are you talking about? Frustrated and desperate, I managed to tuck my legs through my arms, getting my hands in front of me finally. I snatched the phone from his hands and checked it myself. 2 messages. We're on our way. Followed a bit later by the second one. You lied to us. You weren't alone. My head was spinning. I was so sure that they were going to kill her, or hurt her, or do God knows what to her. I'm begging you, you have to let me go back. I'll do anything, I cried as I pleaded with my mom's goons, but I knew it was going to be for nothing. They answered to her and she didn't give a shit about what I wanted. Shut up. I was dismissed outright, to nobody's surprise. They have my girlfriend. I couldn't stop begging. Who are they? Why is this happening? Please, just tell me what's going on. That girl at your apartment? One of them suddenly asked. She's fine, it was actually kind of impressive. I didn't understand. What do you mean? She's with the police at the moment, gonna take a hell of a lawyer to get her out of the steaming pile of shit she made for herself. A lawyer? The police? The guy next to me could see the look of confusion on my face, I assume, because he decided to say a bit more. She left 3 Zeta corpses all over the fucking living room. Place was a mess. She's fortunate she didn't accidentally kill a neighbor or something in the crossfire. A few seconds of reflection as I took in the words. Those motherfuckers. They had never had her, they had been lying this whole time. I had almost walked right into a trap. I felt a bit better knowing she was okay at least. Why the hell did they want me so badly though? What are Zetas? I asked, starting to lose some of my tears. I didn't really expect them to tell me anything. Everything about my mom's business was so secretive. It was obvious she was into some shady shit that had been clear for a long time, but I mostly kept my head down and stayed out of her way. So I was a bit taken off guard when the guy sitting shotgun actually bothered to answer. Cartel from south of the border. Nasty people. You're lucky we got to you first. When we finally got back to my mother's house, I was forcefully dragged into her presence. I was ready for some kind of biblical retribution or rage, but to my surprise she actually seemed relieved to see me. For the first time in years, she gave me a hug. I didn't really know what to say. So we said nothing. When she finally broke away, I could tell she had been crying. I couldn't hold back my questions any longer. Mom, you need to come clean with me about what's going on. It was odd. She was smiling as she told me to shut the fuck up. I did some research into these Zetas a bit later that night. They were terrifying and brutal apparently, known for assassinations and torture. If they had gotten their hands on me or Sam, it could have been a nightmare. Mom really had saved my ass. But the question of why they were after me still lingered. I knew the answer though. I had always known it was a front. The truth about Mom's pharmaceutical company. I just hadn't realized exactly how deep it went until that moment. More searches were done, and more articles came up about the bloody war being waged along the border between two opposing cartels. The more I read, the more I felt ill. Hundreds of people had died, mostly on the Mexican side of the line on the map. Journalists and police officers murdered in cold blood as well. I had to stop reading when I got to an article about some guy having his face peeled off and stitched to a soccer ball. I just wanted to talk to Sam. I pulled out my phone to call her and see how she was doing, but the text messages sat there, reminding me of something I had almost forgotten. She didn't have her phone. Somehow, they had gotten it. But Mom's soldiers had said she had killed the intruders, so how could they have it? I felt incredibly uncertain about everything, like my understanding of the world was collapsing around me all at once. I picked up my phone, and with great reluctance, I dialed Sam's number again. It rang for what felt like an eternity, and finally, someone answered. "Where are you?" It was something of a gruff voice, maybe a bit of a Latin accent. "How did you get Sam's phone?" The line was silent for a while after I asked it. "Come or we'll take out her eyes." It felt increasingly like the trap I expected it was though. "I've heard she's in police custody. I'm going to confirm that, and if it turns out she isn't, I'll come. Don't do anything rash in the meantime." I hung up on him as soon as I said it. I really hoped I was making the right choice. It took about 30 minutes of calling every local station in the city before I found the one where Sam was currently being interrogated. They wouldn't let me talk to her. But I did find out one thing: my mom had paid for one of the best lawyers in the state to represent her. Despite how much she seemed to hate her, I still couldn't help but feel uncomfortable about everything. I messaged Sam's phone back. "You don't have her. Go kill yourselves." Maybe not the best idea to provoke them, but I wasn't sure it mattered. I didn't feel safe here in Arizona anymore. And I certainly wasn't eager to move in with my mom again and live under the watchful eyes of her small army. Things went well in court, and Sam was released as she was deemed to have acted in self-defense. I finally got to see her again. I'd never felt so happy as we made out later that night in my old bedroom at the estate. She told me everything that had gone down, and it was a wild story. After getting the text from Mr. Baker, she had opened the safe and retrieved the carbine. It just sort of happened. I could tell she was still distressed by it. I opened the door and then I killed them. "You did what you had to do." I couldn't imagine it, but I had to say something. "I've killed 4 people now, Dan. 4 people. Sammy, I looked into them. They would have hurt you. They threatened to blind you when I was texting them on your phone." "On my phone?" She bore a strange look on her face. At first it looked like disbelief, but it was apparently just confusion. She produced her phone from her pocket. "The fuck?" I grabbed it from her and immediately started checking her text messages. There was no evidence of any of the ones I had sent. "No, that's impossible. Here, check mine." I pulled it out as well and handed it off to her. She didn't reply at first. "Daniel, the last message you sent me was right before the guys busted into the apartment." That couldn't be right, I double-checked. Somehow, she was correct though. There was no evidence of any other messages. How could that possibly be? The thought plagued me. Tore at my understanding of everything that had come to pass. "No, I'm certain. They must have, hacked your phone or something." "Is that possible?" I was shooting in the dark. "I don't know, But wouldn't the messages be on your phone as well still? I had no answer for that. It doesn't matter, we're both safe and that's the only thing that's important. We could try and get to the bottom of it later. That evening, my head began hurting again. It had been happening a lot, a sort of throbbing migraine that started in my eyes and then slowly strobed into the back of my skull. That axe wound, I was sure. I still had a scar there, and had started wearing hats to conceal it. Several aspirin were put back with a beer. I know it's bad, but I didn't really care at the time. Just wanted the pain to go away. I laid there on my childhood bed, eyes closed, waiting for it to kick in while Sam did something on my old computer. Every click of the keys seemed to bring the agony out. Sam, I'm sorry, can you please stop? Feels like my brain is going to explode. Our eyes collided. You need to go to the doctor. They said it should have gone away by now, and you've been acting weird. She wore her concern on her sleeve. I had no intention of going to the hospital at the moment, but it was nice to know she cared about me. A knock on the door caused the pain to return. Daniel, can I come in? It was my mom. The last person I wanted to see at that moment. Go away. Dan, we need to talk. It's important. I groaned. Fine, what is it? She opened the door and just stood in the doorframe, an envelope in hand. I need a moment in private with my son. She was speaking at Sam, who did as she asked. Helen closed the door as soon as she was out of the room. Why are all the lights off? She asked me. I'm getting another migraine. I'm worried about you, Dan, you've been having them almost every night. And that whole ordeal with you going to that abandoned building. She had yelled at me about it enough already. They told me she was there, I had to go check. We scoured the whole place, there was nobody there. I've told you this already. She took a seat on the bed next to me. Harry said you were just laying on the floor, babbling about something. I was tired of hearing this nonsense. Explain the handcuffs then. They had left them there for me, so that's proof enough for me. Dan. She hesitated. You're forgetting things. I already told you that there were no handcuffs. A brief sigh. Dr. Mitchell thinks it could be pretty serious. Maybe related to that head injury. I've already made you an appointment with the best neurologist in Berlin. This again. I told you, I'm not fucking going to Germany. How many times do I have to tell you? I was screaming at her as my head throbbed. Helen just handed me the envelope. It's for Sam. If that's what it takes to get you to join your brother. He needs you. I popped it open. Inside was an EU passport and a bunch of official-looking documents. The name was Alison Durst. But the photo had Sam's face on it. Mom. She isn't going to just go, her family is all here. I couldn't believe we were still debating this, I just wanted to try and fall asleep and let this headache pass. She's not safe here now, not after what she did. Those men she killed, they were dangerous, and their employers are just as dangerous if not more so. I just sort of stared at her. Please, I wouldn't be sending you away if I didn't feel I had no choice. I can't protect her here. I don't think I can even protect you here. She was begging at this point. Please, Dan. I know I haven't been a good mother, but you and your brother are the most important things in my life. Please, just go. It won't be forever. I was still resisting. Why the hell are you waging war against one of the most dangerous groups in Mexico then? What the fuck? This is your fault. I didn't see any reason to bother with euphemisms anymore. We both knew full well she was a criminal, even if I didn't know all the dirty details. It's hard to explain. She seemed regretful as she spoke. You can't just walk away when you're in this deep. I would stop if I could, but that won't be possible until this is over. Please, Dan, promise me that you and Sam will go. You'll be back in time for Christmas. We had never once celebrated Christmas. And regardless, that meant we'd be in Hamburg or wherever for almost a year. But her warning rang in my head. I can't protect her here. In the end, that was really all I needed to convince me. I had to keep Sam safe. I had always known my mom was involved in some kind of drug-related nonsense. Pharmaceutical company my ass. But if she was waging war on the Zetas, I guess I had never really understood the scale of what she was. I wondered how many people she had killed throughout her career. And if a woman like that felt like she couldn't protect her own children, I had to believe her. We'd go to Germany, as much as I hated the idea. Alright. Fine. But another question came to me. What about you though? Aren't you in danger too? It's different. She seemed dismissive. This is my mess and I'm the one who has to clean it up. It's just how it is. The painkillers were starting to kick in, I felt a little better. But this conversation had all kinds of questions running through my head, now that it was a bit more clear. Mom, Dad didn't really die of cancer, did he? She sat quietly. I wasn't sure she'd tell me the truth, whatever it was. He did. She knew what I was really asking. He was never involved in any of this. For some reason I believed her, though I don't know why. Maybe just because I hadn't had a conversation with her that didn't involve yelling and cursing in what felt like half a lifetime. I vaguely remembered this side of her from when I was younger. I kind of missed it. I'm sorry I've been an asshole. The apology just sort of came out of me, even though I knew she had way more to apologize for. I'll take care of Brandon. She just patted my leg and got up to leave. Your flight leaves in the morning. Don't miss it this time. And get your head checked out. I will. I replied. Sam came back in as soon as she left. What was that all about? I thought you weren't on speaking terms with her? I just wanted to sleep, but that couldn't happen until we talked. Not if she was coming with me in the morning. Sammy, you aren't going to like this, and I'm really sorry. I didn't want to say it, I was afraid she might refuse. There was no way I could allow that. I just handed her the envelope, and she started to shuffle through it before giving me a concerned stare. I can't. She started to add some more words in, but I interrupted her. You have to, or more people will come for you. For us both. They'll use you to get to me and me to get to my mom. But what about my family? My grandmother? I can't just leave. She finally noticed the time on the plane ticket. This is for tomorrow morning. You can't be serious. I felt terrible, and wondered if maybe I should have just told my mom off. But I remembered the things I had read online. The tortures, murders, and unending violence along the border. And Helen's warning. We'll be back by Christmas. I offered hopefully. I really was my mother's son, it seemed. It took some serious convincing, but she did eventually give in. She had mostly been worried about going to jail at the start of all this, but Helen's attorney had gotten all charges dropped startlingly quickly. When I started showing her more info about the Zetas and Hornets' nest she had just kicked over, I could tell she was getting a bit more frightened. A tough year laid in front of us. But now that I was committed, I started to begin thinking about some more positive things. I supposed it would be kind of cool to see another country. I'd never been abroad before. And at least I'd have Sam with me, thank God. Hey Sammy, let's see if anyone in your Facebook group is from Germany. I could see her light up, and I knew she was already imagining exploring ancient European castles and old world forests. Just a quick post, I needed to sleep badly. Sam typed it out. Moving to Hamburg apparently and need a team to continue our work. Anyone in the area? I could still see her disbelief in her eyes. I don't know how I managed to convince her to go along with all this. I remember thinking she must really love me to follow me to the ends of the earth. She hit send. The next day, we got our first reply while we were on the plane.